Thank you for tuning in to Omni Wellness Studio, hosted by Keith Osment and Ali Rico. Through this podcast, we hope to bring you inspiration, knowledge, and strength through hearing about our experience and others that will help you win each day in life, business, and fitness. We are back again, another one. Today, I got a special guest in the house, John Roberson. What's up, man?
Man, I'm doing great. How about you, Keith?
Doing good, man. Just trying to get through a crazy Monday. I was telling you earlier, Mondays are pretty wild for me.
Mondays is definitely a new beginning.
I guess it is for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the first day of the work week, coming out of the weekend, but I don't know, man. You're self-employed, and you may understand this, but like when you're self-employed and you got different things going on, it's like you don't really have like a weekend like off.
You don't. And you know, the thing with me currently is I'm actually employed and self-employed.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I get it, man.
Yeah.
I was there for a while, in that in-between world.
Oh yeah. And you're right. Where you're going with that is scheduling. Yeah. You really don't, you have to really just look ahead, which I'm a scheduler. So that works, you know, you just got to look ahead and say, this weekend, this is what I'm doing. And you got to cut it off.
Is your Google Calendar, you use
maxed
it
out.
That's good, because I just listened to a podcast where a guy said he schedules everything, and it makes sense, because like if you got it all, if you there's something about when you're visually seeing, you input something in that calendar, it gives you like a sense of organization, and you got purpose to your day versus just like freestyling it. And which, you know, I mean, there's things that we just know we got to do. Like, you know, you got to wake up and got to get dressed. You don't need to schedule that.
No.
Brush your teeth. But like, you know, what would happen if you strategically got your calendar out on your phone and typed in, read for 20 minutes, or read a book from 6 a.m. to 6:15 or 6:10, just 10 minutes.
Right.
You know, what would happen to your brain seeing that in that phone? You know, would that help you kind of start having a little bit more structure to your day?
I can tell you it 100% does. And I do that. You know, cool. Back in the day, we used to just do reminders. Those are so easy to snooze, right?
Yeah, they're right.
But I put even this podcast was in my calendar.
Right.
You know, even putting it there for, you know, yesterday, saying, hey, this is coming up tomorrow. And you can set those things up for like 24 hour in advance, et cetera. And my calendar has everything. So like we have several calendars within our calendars, my wife and I. We have one that's for events, right? That could be school play, basketball game, anything. This podcast.
Is she synced to the calendar?
Right. So we both see it. So when
cool.
she adds, I add, we both see it.
And that's awesome. And right there, it can help like just marriages in general. Like, that's what I'm saying, man. Technology, these gadgets we have on our phones, they can think about how many times, you know, you as a man forget that you got a birthday party to go to. How that could have been like eliminated if you and your wife were synced up on a calendar together, right? Like and had those alerts and notifications. Like you be at work that day and all of a sudden get a reminder that says, "Hey, you got little Johnny's birthday party. You got to be at this evening."
Yeah.
Like, okay, you could get prepared for that and get some major brownie points from your honey at home. You know, because you remembered. You're
right, and it's funny because we'll actually text or call each other and be like, "Hey, so on this day, is there anything you haven't put in the calendar yet?" It's like, "No, okay, well we got this to go to," you know. So it definitely works. And then we also do that with our bills, man. So how many times you forget, you know, a lot of people use auto pay, but what we'll do with our bills is we'll actually show it in there the date it's due, okay, how much is due, how it's getting paid. Is it auto draft from the bank, auto draft from a credit card, or do we need to call in and pay it? Because not everybody has the same option. So we'll put that in there. And let's say it's the 24th and you get paid on the 20th. Well, then we'll look at it a week or 2 week in advance and say, okay, even though it's due on the 24th, we get paid on the 20th, so let's change that date in the calendar to the 20th.
Dang, yeah.
So we go ahead and pay it, and then once it's paid, if she pays or I pay it, we'll go in parentheses, but paid beside it. I know it seems like a lot, but when you're as wide open as we are, like, you know, you guys are as well, why it kind of cuts down some redundancy.
And it really boils down to like one word, in my opinion. That's like communication.
100%.
And that's like a thing that will cripple any marriage,
friendship, business, anything. It's 100% communication, and then we have kind of mastered that. And I think that one of the things that I inherited that from was when I was in the music business and I was a road manager and I used to book. If you didn't have it in the calendar, like you had to sit there and write itineraries for a living, basically. So it was like 8 o'clock bus call, 9:30 stopping at Planet Fitness in such and such city.
You had to have everything.
You had to do it
mapped out
for everybody on the bus, and everybody wanted to eat something different, you know.
Man.
So it came from that, and then once you live that life for so long, you can't not live it because then you're completely unorganized.
You said you were in the music business,
correct? Yeah.
So I'm gonna actually pause there and just kind of go back and like John Roberson. I know you as John Roberson. I know you are also a host of a podcast, Mindset Reload.
The Mindset Reload.
I had the privilege of joining you on one of your episodes, a week or two ago.
Yeah, man, enjoyed that.
Yep, and they can find your podcast on Spotify.
Yeah, it's on all platforms now. It was the hardest thing to get on Apple Podcasts because I don't have an Apple product.
Oh man,
so that was very, very difficult.
Yeah, I bet.
But it took about 3 weeks to get on there. But now all of them is across the board. I utilize Spotify the most.
I feel like that's what I was going to ask you. You know, I feel like if you're on Spotify, you already got like 75% of the population, and then if you want to throw in Apple Podcasts and like iHeartRadio, but man, there's like 50 more. I'm like, I can't do all of them. I mean, there's like Rumble and
and there's I don't know who you use to distribute with, but I use Spotify's Anchor FM. Yep. And they automatically do everything.
Cool.
You don't have to add it. You just go select it. It's done.
Yeah, y'all go check out his podcast, Mindset Reload. I'm not sure which episode me and him were on, but it was called Recap with Keith Osmond.
It was Decompressed Stress.
Decompressed Stress. Yep. So if you need a good dose of information about how to handle stress, go dive into that one. But yeah, man, John, I know I haven't known you too long. Right. I met you maybe a couple of months ago through the nutrition shop. I know a little bit about you, but I'm looking forward to this episode because I can learn a little bit more about you. So you've already touched on, you were in the music business. I already got a lot of questions about that. So tell us like, where are you from? A little bit about you, family life, married, kids.
Okay.
What kind of in a nutshell, career wise, what you've done up until now. So kind of curious, man.
Man, I tell you what, I am the definition of ups and downs, right? But the biggest thing is, and what I teach through my mindset, let's just call it therapy, right? Mindset therapy through our podcast is embrace that. There's going to be ups, there's going to be downs, there's going to be highs, there's going to be lows. Mm-hmm. You just got to get yourself out of it. And the right mindset will allow you to bounce back. Doesn't mean we're perfect all the time.
Heck no.
It doesn't mean that our lives, just because it looks good on social media or looks good while we're at Spartan Smoothies or I'm walking, wherever it is, we struggle just like everyone else.
Yeah, man.
And that's what the podcast is about. It's like, hey, you're not alone. Listen to us because we've been there, done that. And it's actually therapy for us to talk about it because it opens up old wounds. Mm-hmm. As we're talking about, hey, this is how I got through it. It brings you back to a place to where you're like, man, I really did hit, not really rock bottom right there, but I hit pretty low, man. I bounced back from that. It shows your resiliency, right?
Right.
So, in the podcast, we talk about, hey, if you have the right mindset, though, and you have some bad days, you bounce out of them quicker.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? It's like being an athlete. If you have all the training in the world, you have a bad day, you miss a tackle, what do? You change your angle. Mm-hmm. It's the way life is. But you have to have that coaching, you have to have that knowledge and that mindset in order to be able to bounce back. Yeah. So that's kind of what the podcast is about. That's what you guys are doing, man. That's what life's about, right?
Yeah.
So for me, I grew up actually right down the road in Armurchie, Georgia.
Let's see. Okay. Yeah. I didn't know you were from here.
Yeah,
okay.
Man. Born and raised.
Armurchie High School.
Armurchie High School, graduate in 97. I had a lot of buddies that are here, but going into my senior year, and I always dive into this because this is what catapulted me. I played football for like 11 years, counting peewees and stuff. So you were like, and that's what I want to be. I want to be Brett Favre when I grow up, right?
Yeah.
Even though I was a defensive end. I don't know how that would have worked. But, And but my dad got diagnosed with cancer going in my senior year, and I always worked. Even though I got to the point, like at 14 years old, I was washing dishes at Pasquale. It's like as soon as I could do something that made money, I wanted to do it.
Man, they got some good pizza.
Man, they do. I haven't had it in a
buffet.
while.
I guess you got burnt out.
No, you got me on those new pizzas, man.
That's right. Hey, they're a bit healthier for you,
dude. I eat like 2 or 3 a week.
Yeah, they're good.
We had them Friday when I got back in from Florida.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're good, bro. That's what it's about. It's a conversation. So, as soon as I could work, I did. If it was mowing lawns like we did when we were kids, or baling hay or whatever it was.
Was you doing this just because you had that natural drive, or were you having to like financially help towards
natural
like your dad?
drive, man?
I didn't know if your dad being sick put your mom in a situation where you had to kind of step up and fill a role, or
well, that happened. I graduated when I was 17, which was weird. You know, I went in kindergarten at 4, so I was kind of like advanced but not advanced. You know what I mean? Like I just advanced as far as my life. So by the time I was 12, I was like, you know, my dad, he was a workaholic. Like, you know, the man could do anything. He was a pipe fitter, was his normal job down here at the paper mill, which he never said he hated. I'm sure he probably did. I know we hated when he came home and he smelled like that. But yep. I mean, if he, you know, sometimes they'd have layoffs and stuff. He would go build houses with my uncle. You know, there wasn't nothing he couldn't do. I mean, he had a welding shop at the house, and I saw him crank a car engine on the ground before. And I was like, yeah, I have every encyclopedia, every knowledge-based book right here in my father.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And, so I had that and I had sports. And I just had that natural drive to just be better tomorrow than I was today or yesterday. And
1% better every day.
1%, that's all it takes. Yeah. And man, I self-competed for so long, especially with sports, but it catapulted me ahead because I had that personal drive. But then when I was going into my senior year, my dad got diagnosed with cancer, and I had to make a decision on what I was going to do. But God works in mysterical way, or whatever the word is, right? Just in ways that you don't understand, but when you look back, you're like, it makes sense. So going in my junior year, we had vocational tech down the road, right?
Good old Coosa Valley Tech, or now it's Georgia
Floyd
North
County Tech, yeah,
whatever it's called.
So I had AutoCAD that I took over there, drafting and design, because I grew up around construction, which is what I do now. But I grew up around that, and I always had a thing. Like before we had computers, man, I'm 43. When I was 12, we had word processors, right? I would sit there and draw our house plans on a word processor, but just hitting the lines, you know,
crazy.
And then you'd rotate it and all that. So as soon as that opportunity came up, I jumped on board with that. So my junior year, went over and was studying AutoCAD and stuff. And then by April, my junior year, the Board of Education actually called and said, hey, we're looking for somebody that'll come over here to the Floyd County Board of Education and put all of our school drawings in AutoCAD so we can just print off copies of it instead of them taking the original drawings and getting tore up. Talking about the maintenance department.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, man, that's cool. You know, I'm like 16. Let's go.
Dang.
Yeah. But then, boom, a few months later, Dad gets diagnosed with cancer. So I'm like, what'd I do?
What kind of cancer did he?
Esophagus, which they said could have been from welding chemicals and all that.
Really?
Yeah, he was a smoker too, though. So it's kind of hard. You know, of course, they're going to jump to smoking.
But between the smoking and then the possible fumes, probably wasn't a good recipe.
No, definitely not. You know, and it's definitely made me more cautious. You know, I got friends and family that are like, man, I don't go to the doctor. I'm like, I do, because had he went previously, could caught it. So why take that chance? You know, you never know what decision you make that affects others down the road. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, let me make the best decisions I possibly can that I have control over every day, so that it doesn't affect someone else.
Right.
So, my senior year, needless to say, I didn't even get to play football. I just had too much going on. I felt like I needed to go to work. I felt like I needed to do the most I can so they didn't have to stress at least my bills. Because you got to think, man, going from junior to senior, you got car payment.
Yeah, a lot of times your parents are paying for that, but you want to take that load off of them a little bit.
Fortunately, and I love it, my parents made me take care of that.
Okay.
You know, I think my older kids now hate that about them more than I did, but I liked it because it's like, hey, you know, I had the drive to go to work anyway. So I was like, I'll pay for which they did help income tax wise, you know, buy the first car or whatever. But yeah, they're like, insurance on you, gas on you, 100%.
Yeah, you learn real quick the value of $1 in work.
And I wasn't in the guy that would run the roads. I mean, like I had to go to football practice, baseball practice, whatever it was, come back, go to work, whatever.
Yeah.
But anything I could do extra, I wanted to do, whether it be food, you know, and my brother was like probably, let's see, he was 7 years younger than me, so 9, 10 when he got diagnosed. So, you know, obviously he wanted to play sports and stuff, so I can't say that contributed a whole lot, but as a 16-year-old, I felt like I contributed a whole lot and sacrificed a lot. And I remember a voice in my head saying, man, just do it now and you'll be blessed later. And could that be a God thing? Yes, it could have been a God thing. Could it be me, just how I was built? You know, maybe a mixture of both. So I definitely feel like that come to fruition. I have been blessed. Anytime that it's got screwed up, it's because of me, right? I think a lot of us can attest to that.
Yep.
But so needless to say, I didn't play football my senior year, and I still had that. I would go to school for 3 periods and then eat lunch and then go to the Board of Education and work, which I would get credit for showing up to a class I didn't go to anymore, but because I was at work, you got that attendance.
Oh, man.
But they also paid you.
So you're getting paid.
Yeah. And it was like one of the first internships I kind of did with high schoolers back then. So it was pretty cool. Cool. So I did that, and all that did was just just gave me that drive even more and more, and then actually that led into shortly after graduation, I got into engineering fiber optic networks all over the country, which is what built the internet. You think this is 1997.
Wow, you were laying literally the fiber and the cables you needed to do that. Was that underground? Underground,
aerial. Now it's mostly underground, but we were doing Atlanta, Charlotte, North Carolina, and what it was is, you would go in and AT&T had extra conduit in the ground that's vacant, so you just pull in there and save from having to tear up streets when you could,
Dang.
But yeah, we helped build the internet, which I don't know how I feel about that now. I mean, some of us good, some of us bad.
You were making AOL happy back in those days. Dial up and all that stuff.
Yeah. It was crazy, man, but I enjoyed the ride for a while. I went about as far as I could have with that before the technology kind of like put it out, because back then you had to have one single fiber, which was a tenth the size of a human hair, that basically ran someone's internet.
Really?
And then they came out back, 3 or 4 years later, where the technology actually split what we know now as bandwidth, which it was them and no one really knew, right? But they split it. So now you had splitters that and equipment and these head ends that would split that for you, so you didn't have that much. So there's so many miles of what they call dark fiber laying in the ground now. So it kind of got to the point where it was like it was up there real quick, and then it kind of died, within a decade of itself. But so I got into that, and I was over like $6 to $8 million projects at 21 years old, man.
Doing a lot of traveling.
Yeah, and at that time, well, I didn't travel as much. Most of it was in Atlanta, and then my dad passed away in 99, so I was in it for like 2 years. He had battled cancer for 3 years. He passed away in 99. And then, like I'd said on my last episode on the Mindset Reload, we actually did one introducing, my wife was the host, and it's called Man Behind the Mic, which dove into a lot of the same stuff. But it probably was a getaway, to get away from his death. But even in that, it allowed me to grow so much more, because then when I moved away, I was like, man, this is 20 years in advance where I just left. And, back then I was a shy person. Like, I didn't like being in crowds, and I didn't like being the center of attention or any of that, I didn't even like going to the mall. And going through that, it grew me probably 10 years in less than 2 years. You know what I mean?
Was you real close to your dad?
Yeah, we were a tight-knit family. My brother was closer to him than I was, I felt like.
You got siblings. You got siblings.
Yeah, I got a little brother.
Yeah, that's right.
He was closer to him, because you always have, that as parent, you always have that child that's more clingier to one than the other, and et cetera. So I think I was closer to my mom, even though like I observed my dad from a distance, and I was one to sit back and learn. My brother was more to jump in there with him, and
Yeah.
And but yeah, we were close. I wouldn't be who I am if it wasn't for him.
Yeah, and you lost your dad when you were in your early 20s.
19.
19 years old.
19 years old.
And I asked this just because I'm more curious. I haven't been through a stage in my life where I've really lost somebody really close to me. And I know my day's coming. So naturally, I just want to know. I had a gentleman on a few weeks ago that lost his mother recently. And I'm like, well, he lost her like a year and a half ago, 2 years. But I'm like, how do you get through that? I guess you have to, but is there a manual? Is there a user's guide to how to get over some, loss of a parent? Because I told Brian, the guy I was interviewing, that I feel like when you lose somebody like that, it's literally like a ripping some kind of plant out of the ground, the roots out of your soul, and it's just always going to be kind of empty. Nothing will ever completely fill that. You just kind of learn to live with it.
Yes.
Is that kind of how it's supposed? Is that how
that's how it is? Man, that's part of your foundation gone. So you think you're on a house with the foundation. Some of that just got knocked out. you know?
Yeah.
But what you have to do, and you know, this is easy for me to say now at 43 than it was back then, you know? What you have to do is you have to embrace what you were taught through that. Does that make sense? Like, they didn't die in vain. So when they're looking down on you, they want to see what they instilled in you and you making it. And
that's what would get me through. I told Brian that too. I said, you know, once my mom or dad leaves this earth, I could very well, you know, be in a state of depression, like for a long time, or I could ask myself, what would they want me to be doing as they look down? You know, they wouldn't want me just totally just going into a shell and just shutting down forever. Of course, you're going to have your moments of where you're grieving, but you know, I'm like, you'd have to flip that switch to where, like, okay, I've grieved. You know, I'm going to think about them from time to time. I'm sure certain songs and certain things are going to be brought up, and it's okay to get emotional. But for the most part, they want me to keep moving forward.
Sure.
You know, so
yeah,
I guess I admire, or not, admire the right word? I respect people that has
admire's good.
Went through that and still been able to, you know, move forward and do great things, because you got a lot of people that lose loved ones and they do stay in that shell, and it's like
they do
6-7 years goes by and they're still just shut down. Like, it's almost like it's just got a strangle on them. I'm like, I don't want to tell them to just like get over it. That's not the right word, but like, well, I want to ask them, like, what would your mom want you to be doing? You know, does your mom want you to be?
And you know what? I think it's okay to do that. I do that. You know, have I been accused of being non-empathetic or, you know, non-sensitive? Of course, but it's not that I'm being that way. It's that I'm telling you what helped me get through it. Yeah. And it's cool because this same stuff is what my wife and I talked about on my last episode. And, you know, that's not the only death I've experienced. And, she actually went through a lot of that in her teenage years as well, unexpectedly and stuff. So I've lost friends. I've lost cousins. I've lost my dad. And, you just got to push forward and you got to say, hey, this is what they taught me. I don't want their death to be in vain. So this is what I've got. And you got to use it to your advantage. Yeah. I mean, that's a sensitive word, right? What I mean by that, so I always say something like that, like, hold on, let me tell you what I mean by that. When I weighed 420 pounds, I would go to the doctor all the time. I think I'm having a heart attack. I think I got another blood clot. And they're like, man, if you would take this anxiety and channel it in the right direction and go hit the gym and go diet and exercise, you wouldn't have any of these problems. So I looked at death kind of the same way. Is take that for what it is. You can't change it. It's out of your control. Are you going to grieve? Yes, grieve, but don't let it, a lot of people will let it be a crutch. They'll let it hang, well, if so-and-so wouldn't have died, I wouldn't be what I'm doing. That's not true, because every single feeling you have comes from a thought. Mm-hmm. That's facts. Okay. So you're thinking it, therefore you're feeling it. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it doesn't mean you can't think about it, but it's how you receive your own thoughts. Mm-hmm. You know, we weren't taught exactly. I got another episode called It's Not What You Think It Is, because you really weren't taught how to think. At what age are we taught to think? Because you have a doctor telling you to do this, and then parents, and then your school system and all this, and eventually, like, you're 18, here's the world. Right. Figure it out. So I'm big on trying to teach them, you know, as they gradually get old, you know, kids or whoever, because your thoughts do equal your feelings. So true. Yeah. So you say you were 420 pounds at one point. Yeah. So was you bigger as a kid growing up? I mean, teenager. You know, I want to say compared then, you know, in the 80s, 90s, well, I didn't eat a whole cheeseburger till I was like 11. So it's hard to say, but looking back when I was 12, I felt like I was bigger than most of my friends. Not in a bad way. I was just bigger bone or whatever. And, but I remember back then you couldn't even play football if you weighed over 112. So even at 12 years old, I weighed 110. And I've coached football players at 12 years old that weigh 180. Dang. So I felt like I did kind of start trending in there. But then even when I got into high school, because you know at 12 years old, 13 years old, you hit that growth spurt anyway. And then when I got into high school, we ate weights. I mean, that's what we did. We went in at 7 a.m. or 6 or something, then had weights and then worked out after, then or had practice and worked out after that. So I went into high school weighing 130, which I don't think that's big as a freshman.
No, dude, that's kind of small.
Yeah, right. But I was plumpy, but I graduated 260 solid muscle. So I doubled my weight in high school, but it wasn't bad weight. But then you have that graduation 40, graduation 60 pounds that you gain between 18 and 20 or whatever, that it just happens because you're not in that routine. So I maintained that for a while. And then it wasn't until the crazy thing was, it wasn't until I actually started my own company that I gained I think 60, it felt like 60, 80 pounds overnight. It was really 4 months, which is still a lot.
And what changed? Like when you say start your own company, did it just force you to just basically stress eat?
I think it was stressy. I think I had a relationship with food, which in the South that's easy to do because we eat when we're sad, we eat when we celebrate.
Right.
Well, you know what I mean?
Well, yes. I've talked about that many times. How if you gotta draw a line somewhere, because yes, you're right. Here, there's a birthday, there's a holiday, there's something every weekend. I mean, every day. It could be you look on the calendar. There's National Donut Day. There's this day. There's your niece's birthday party on the weekend. Your best friend's getting married.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, it's like an Easter, and then there's Thanksgiving. It's like, yeah, you're right. I mean, it's like crazy.
Holidays always gain 15 pounds.
And then you combine that with just everyday stressors. And I always tell people food is like the most addictive, readily available drug ever.
It is.
I mean, it really is. Like
It's a codependency.
I mean, it's like you got a product that you can eat and it just releases so many endorphins and it feels so good, and it'd be like a cocaine addict just walking around with cocaine shops everywhere.
But what's crazy, and you and I know this now, but until you flip that script, then it feels the opposite, right? That stuff starts making you feel like crap. Like as soon as you eat it, you're like, what did I just do? Because I feel like crap. So really, my next episode's about that. It's called the placebo effect.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And we don't have to dive into that right now. We could dive into it later, but your brain outdoes any medication or anything you think that heals you, or man, it's crazy when you start doing the statistics on it. You became self-employed and it happens to a lot of people. I mean, you start packing on the weight, probably just, you're so busy. You are grabbing stuff that's just quick and on the go. Man, it was like Hardee's in the morning.
You're so just like tunnel vision on the business and putting in that work in the beginning to get it built and off the ground. I know, I can see where it's just so easy to grab something quick, but little did you know you were adding 5 pounds and 5 pounds and 10 pounds this month. It was just next thing you know, you wake up and you're 420.
Yeah, I didn't even own a scale, right? Man. But I would eat. I remember I would eat first thing in the morning. I would sit down, which never happens anymore. Sit down and eat lunch. I don't know how anybody does that. I'm not knocking anybody that's listening that does. Kudos to you guys. If I sit down and eat lunch every day, I would gain so much weight. I mean, I don't even know how people do that. But then I would do that, and then at 3 or 4 o'clock on the way home, I'd grab fast food again, and then eat dinner when I got home. And it was definitely 100%, even though I was making probably at that time more money than I ever had, I was stressed. It was a lot to manage.
That's a lot. Yeah, and that could be a whole nother episode.
Yeah.
People have this, it's such a catch-22 for me because I'm all about telling people to chase their dreams and visions, and if you have this desire to break away from the system and do your own thing, then go for it. But I also know the shit they're going to have to go through,
man,
for that to happen. And is it worth it in the end? Most of the time, yes. But gosh, it can, if you're not careful, it can a lot of things can come unglued in the process. Your health, your marriage, it's a lot. I've seen a lot of people go from the 9 to 5 to doing their own thing, and yes, they've built looks like a successful business, but in the process, they've got a divorce.
So what defines success then? So
yeah, I mean, it's like such a double-edged sword, and I feel like I said, I get caught between this rock and a hard spot of encouraging people to chase their dream, and if they feel trapped working a 9 to 5 or a job they hate, yes, you need to get out of it somehow, some way. But at the same time, I do know the sacrifices and the risk involved with everything involved, family-wise, kids, because I don't know, man. I know that could be a whole nother episode, but
well, here it is. You know, people listening and probably you sitting over and me over there, it's like, man, this conversation's all over the place. So it's not. Everything you just said touches on every bit of that, right?
yep.
So the last thing that your parents will think when they pass, or mine did, wasn't, man, I wished I'd made more money.
Oh no, man.
It was, I wished I had more time.
Oh yeah, time is the most valuable thing in the world. Yeah, you're right. You take a multi-billionaire and you instantly tell him he's got cancer and he's only got 2 months to live. How much money would he pay to get his health back? It'd be,
and not know if it even happens.
Right.
Time. So that ties into it. To me, happiness. What is happiness? I'll argue with people all the time. They'll say, "Oh man, yeah, money buys happiness." No, it does not. Money buys pleasure. Pleasure is a temporary high. Happiness only comes from peace.
Yeah, and money for me is another form of freedom.
Absolutely.
So, but it's like I see where my life has increased in a positive way in some areas, and I see where my life has. I got to really keep it in check in certain areas, because when you're self-employed, man, it's hard to keep it all in this nice little tidy box.
Guardrails.
Yep. And but my whole goal is to get to the point where it all meant something. So learning from my mistakes and delegating and hiring the right people in the culture and training people and get it to where, yes, it's not so much of my time. Maybe it was in the beginning and it had to be because you was building the foundation, but ultimately for me, money is going to equal freedom. And, whether that's being able to go away for a week or two and still have everything working, for me here on a local level, whether that means, or even giving other people opportunity or donating or volunteering somewhere. How cool would it be for me to be able to go, I'm really big into helicopters and planes. I want to go spend a week out at Tiger Flight at the airport with the kids one of these days and help, and make an impact with them. So money for me means all that.
And it does. And I got caught up in that. But at the same time, it goes back to what we were talking about, Google calendars.
Yep.
Set, here's your work time, right? Here's Keith time.
Yep.
If you don't have Keith time, or anybody listening, if you don't have you time, you'll get burnt out. And if you don't take time for yourself, you won't be able to give your business 100%. So one thing you said in there right there, I couldn't agree with more because I've owned my own companies, is training the right people culture-wise, right? People who have the same desire you have to learn what you want to teach them.
Yep.
Not somebody just looking for a job, someone's looking for a career. And even though that's a job right now, mindset, it needs to be a career. This is something do you want to be in the health and fitness world? Come with me. I'm going to train you what I know. Because that's your legacy.
Speaking of that, I had a girl that reached out to us through social media wanting to work at the nutrition shop. I've always thought highly of her. She's actually done some photography for us in the past, and I always thought it'd be cool if it got to a point where she got of age, where she could drive, if she could come work for us. So I had high hopes for her. Well, she finally reached out to us, said, "Hey, I'm 16 now. I'd like to apply." So I sent her the online application. She came in for an interview, and just to do my due diligence, and I didn't want to just be like, "Oh, you're hired. We love you." I wanted to make her kind of work for it. So I told her I'd get back with her within 24 to 48 hours. Even though I knew I was probably going to hire her, I did have a few other people I wanted to look at. So just I like to sleep on things sometimes, pray about it.
That's good.
So I did message her back 48 hours later and thinking we were good to go, saying, "Hey, when can you start training?" She wrote back and said, "I'm sorry. I've took a job at another protein shake shop in town, tea shop." And I said, "Whoa, what happened?" She said, "My mom had just told me to apply for as many jobs as I could and just take whatever I got first." And I'm like, "So you just needed a job, just a job?" She's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Okay, that's all I need to know."
Yeah.
And that's not the energy and culture I want. So as much as I thought she was a certain type of person, she just obviously don't see what we're about, energy wise. So
And that could have went two ways. Like if she had answered that, look, I just wasn't going to wait because I'm ready to work and this is my passion, you probably wouldn't have received it the way you did.
Right.
But it was, I just need a job, which, let's be honest, parents can force that down their throat.
Yeah, you're right. Okay. That's probably what happened.
Probably honestly. What happened, to be honest. I wouldn't be surprised if one day, she came back around, I mean, you guys are doing great things, right?
Yeah.
But there's two ways to receive that message. Yep. I see where you're going with that.
Yep.
And I've been that way. Fine, if you don't be, I'm not saying you were this way, but I was like, if you don't be a part of me, you're missing out, But I've had to grow out of that myself because I have reacted that way before. And I'm not saying you did.
No,
I know where you were going with it. You were like, hey, be a part of Team Spartan.
Yeah, man. So, anyways, I didn't mean to sidetrack there.
This ain't a sidetrack. It's an open conversation, man. This is good. Everything that we talk about is educational or will click with somebody. That's one thing I learned through my podcast is I'll sit there and talk. And then the least substance in the podcast is the one that the least person I would ever expected reaches out and is like, man, if you want to say that one thing that clicked with me, I'm like, wow. You just never know.
Yeah, man. So what you were at 420. What was a turning point? Like what
my health,
did you have
man.
a health scare? Did you have like a doctor say, hey man, if you don't, or did you just get sick of feeling like you were feeling? Like what was the switch or light bulb that went off when you finally was like, I gotta make something happen?
So honestly, the crazy thing is at that weight I had more confidence than I have now. Which
really?
Is weird. Yeah. I mean, there would be times I'd look in the mirror and be like, man, you're pathetic, which is negative self-talk, and that happens. And some of my podcasts talk about how to treat that. But I was successful. So that was a blinder for me. But yeah, so doctors had always said, if you don't change, things are going to happen. And I knew, but you know what that did? That made it worse. Because it's easy for Captain Obvious to say, hey, you're 420, you're going to have a freaking heart attack. But who was the one saying, here's how we can help you get through that? See what I'm saying? So you got to be careful when talking to people, because for me, it did the opposite. It made me leave there and go eat a whole pizza because I was depressed. You know what I mean? So what it was for me was I just took a long look in the mirror. And there was one time, like I said, I was living in Nashville then in the music business. I worked on Music Row. And we would walk to lunch and back. And one day, I felt like I couldn't get across the whole parking lot. I had to take a break. And I was like, that was the turning point for me.
That's when I the
so
light bulb went off.
Yeah, that was the, and then, and then the second thing was seeing my kids and thinking, man, I can't get on a ride at Six Flags.
Did you ever try to get on a ride and did
previous
you get rejected?
To that? Yeah.
Really,
I mean, like
happens.
You couldn't, and I was like, man, I'd like to fly. Man, I was a big dude. I mean, my weight, I wore size 56 pants, man.
420. Yeah, that is big. That's not like, because anytime it's me, you're bumping 400. That's a big dude.
Yeah, man. And, before I'd lost, hey, let's do the Adipex trend. I'd lose 30 or 40 and then come right back. It's not until, people say this, and if you use this word, I apologize in advance. People say, hey, I'm on a weight loss journey. My viewpoint from me, it didn't work for John Roberson, okay? Because a journey has a destination.
Yeah.
It's got to be a lifestyle change. It's got to be something you commit to and you stay in that vein. And it's going to have its ups and downs. It's going to be hard. But just like the calendar you talked about, I call that, a lot of people just call it a calendar and a to-do list. I call it an accountability chart, right? I say on all my episodes. Once you change, and we talked about, is it 90 days or whatever? Mm-hmm. For me, anything I do for 90 days, I feel like becomes a routine, becomes second nature. Once you make that change, you tend to, well, if you have a growth mindset, it depends on the individual, but for me, it tend to become an accountability. So if I got off track, I had guardrails I set up. And it's like, even now, when I weigh every day, morning and night. People say don't do that. John Roberson does because that's what's best for me. Okay? Keeps me in line. I give myself a 5-pound window because of water weight.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Depending on what you eat. You know what I'm saying? But it's like, okay, if this morning I weighed 260 and I'm 267, a couple of days I'm going to cut back. I'm going to go more liquid diet. I'm going to go more protein shakes, less heavy food, bring it back down. Or I'm going to go to the gym extra hard, go do it. I can't stand. My wife will get on a treadmill. I don't like it. It's boring to me, but I'll get out here and walk for 3 hours,
What if you had a virtual reality headset on where all of a sudden you're on a bike and you're having to ride a bicycle through a town chasing a robber. You know,
dude, that would definitely help.
Like burn some calories.
Yeah, no, so that would definitely help.
That's another idea I got in the works.
Right? Yeah, me and you got to collaborate on some of these
down
ideas.
The pipeline.
Yeah.
I got a cool concept. I'm not going to release this episode now until I get it built.
Hey, for everybody listening, this is a non-disclosure agreement.
Yep, you're signing it right now by listening to it.
By hitting play.
So, I'll tell you about that when we
man,
turn
I
the
got
mics
some
off.
ideas too.
But yeah, so man, cardio for you is no fun, but you like outside walking, which I do too, man. Especially this time of year when it's like in between like winter and spring. Mm-hmm. I went and did 2 miles this morning on the trails, and for me, like it hit me yesterday. I was walking, I was listening to a podcast, and I was handing out free smoothie coupons on the trail to people I passed. So think about that for a minute. 3 things are happening.
That's right.
So win.
Yes, can't go wrong.
You're that's actually 4 wins. Like you're out in nature. Mm-hmm. You're, I'm seeing the squirrels, the birds. I'm by the river. You're walking. You're burning calories. It's good for your health. I'm passing out free smoothie coupons. You're giving back, making people's day. Mm-hmm. And I'm listening to podcasts, so I'm learning.
And you're marketing.
And I'm marketing. It's driving sales up.
And you're getting natural oxygen.
There you go.
So there's so many benefits.
Yeah, so like it just hit me. So it's actually motivated me now that I've got that kind of outlook on it. It's motivated me to stay consistent at that, because how many times can you win all in a 40-minute window?
You can, but that's why we should. And what you said, what did you just say? 40 minutes.
Yeah, 40 minutes.
40 minutes.
That's what it takes me to walk 2 miles.
But it was only a 40-minute, what some people consider a sacrifice. You and I consider it has to happen, a necessity. 40 minutes. Did all that.
Yep. And the last episode, if you guys are listening and you listen to I'm not sure what order these are going to be in, but we did the math on one episode to where, and John, you may find this, you probably already know about it, but you can take, there's 24 hours in a day times 7, so there's 168 hours in a week. Mm-hmm. And then you just check yourself. You go through there and say, get you a notepad and a pencil and say, all right, how many hours of sleep do I get per night? Let's just say you get some good sleep. You're 8 times 7. That's
8.
56 hours of sleep. You don't get 8. You don't need 8. So 56 hours, and then you say, all right, I work out an hour a day, hour and a half a day. So you do that. Get your calculator at times 7. That's 10 and a half. And then what you do is you go through there, just kind of figure up, add all that up, and you'll be surprised out of 168 hours in a week, how much time you got left. After you add up the sleeping, the working out, spend an hour or 2 a day with the family, however you want to divvy it up, there's still usually 30 plus hours left that is like unaccounted for. And it goes back to utilizing a calendar and getting more organized.
Accountability.
So when people say you don't have time, you got time. And
put the phone down.
Well, I was going to say another thing too that's very humbling. It was for me. Granted, a lot of it is for business use, but I still had to put a cap on it. Is go to your phone settings, look at your screen time. That will be a very, very telltale sign of how much time you're spending scrolling. And it even break it down into apps, like how much time you're spending on Instagram, Facebook, and all that stuff. So
and that stuff's hard for business owners, because like my wife, she runs 3 businesses, and one of them is probably 50% online, the other 2 are 100% online. So it's kind of hard to get off your phone if your business is phone based. It
is. It's a fine line for me too, man, because I'll get on there and under the intentions to just post something business wise, but I'll post it, and then all of a sudden something will snag my attention, and then next thing you know, I'm scrolling that guy's feed for 15 minutes. It might even just be like entertainment, but you gotta be careful.
Yeah. I mean, I'll come through one of those reels now with fitness. I'm like, okay, what's he doing to get those 3D delts, And I'm sitting there watching. I'm like, I'm writing that in my notebook. Because one thing I do outside the counter, man, is I have notes. I have Google Notes on my phone. Yeah. And I'll sit there and I'll still make me a to-do list. I mean, I feel like I have to. I don't know if it's because I'm getting older, if it's more organization, right? Probably both. But I'll even be like, new workout ideas.
Yeah.
And I'll go ahead, I'll schedule my workouts out, man. I'm like, Monday, this is the groups, this is the muscle groups I'm hitting, these are what I'm doing, how many reps, etc. Tuesday, this is what I'm doing. Wednesday, I know I can't work out, so Thursday, So it's good to do all that. And then going back to the social media thing, I think one thing that's very important for people who are listening, because not everybody, some people have a fixed schedule, right? They know they go to work at 8. They know they get off at 5.
Right.
Right. And we know there's kids and ball games and dinner and stuff, but really you can organize every bit of that because we have to worry about the stuff we can control and put it in its place. So for me, when I first started working out again back in June, I was remodeling a Target in Lawrenceville, Georgia, and I would drive hour and a half, 2 hours, but at 11 o'clock every day, because we would start at 6 a.m., at 11 o'clock every day I had lunch. Well, there was a gym, awesome gym called C3 Fitness next door. It's part of a church, and they have them nationwide. And I would go over there for lunch every day at 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
And I noticed that one thing was hugely important for me because I knew at 11 o'clock every day that's what I had to do. So I had a set schedule. Two things I benefited from that. Not only did I benefit from getting good exercise, I also didn't eat bad for lunch.
Well, yeah. I mean, you
didn't have time.
Right.
So I would prep something simple, or sometimes my wife and I go to is the 1 minute rice and some tuna and mix it together with some avocado.
Yeah.
A little lime, salt, pepper, good go. What 200 calories maybe?
Right.
Maybe 250. So for me, I'm a scheduled guy. So I had to go at 11 o'clock every day. If I go before work or after work, it was excuses. Either it's too early, I'm tired, hadn't had enough coffee, blah, blah, or I'm ready to get home to the family. It never really was I'm too tired to work out. I was like, man, I really miss my family. Let me get home to them. You know, so for me, it was setting that. So like my wife, she has the routine of she'll drop the kids off at school, she'll go work out, then she starts her day. So everybody's just got to find that niche, you know. And if you're a married couple and y'all have kids and everything, you got to help each other out. You know, sometimes it's as simple as, hey, at 5 o'clock, everybody's home. We got toddlers or whatever. Hey, I'm going to go work out. When I get back, I'll watch the kids. You go work out. It sucks. Like, I like working out with my wife, but sometimes it just doesn't happen. But what's important is yourself. And you have to put time aside.
I do agree that it's you know, when you're married, you're raising kids. It is teamwork. It helps. I have noticed that sometimes I'll be working with people that they tell like every excuse under the sun, man, why they can't get any kind of fitness or whatever. And I'm like, and I feel like a lot of parents, and I'm not sure how I can say this, but like,
just be honest.
They both put their whole life on hold for that child. They put that, I'm trying to figure out how to say this. That's almost like they'll let their whole other angle, all the other moving pieces of their life. I know parenting is a big deal and you got to sacrifice something.
It's not a manual to it.
But at the same time, like, I feel like so many people, like I think Allie and Amanda had brought this up on their podcast, how a lot of moms won't even put their child in a daycare just to go have an hour of time for her. It's almost like they will literally just let their whole life crumble for that kid. So how do you find that balance? You know, how do you find that balance of hey, it's okay if you got to put your kid in a daycare or hire a babysitter. How cool would it be to, you know, I get it's busy and you're working and you got the hustle and bustle of life, but man, if your whole health and mental, your tank just is on E because you're putting like 150% into raising this kid and you got other kids and sports, like get some help somewhere, you know, like.
To me, it's called reclaiming your identity.
Yeah.
You were someone, and this is coming up. So this next episode I got coming out this Wednesday is called Strong as a Mother. And we have mental health coach Ani Michalski and my wife on. It's all about self-care for mothers, finding time for yourself, and reclaiming your identity. And that's exactly what you hit on. So it's like you were a certain person that did certain things before your kids, and some people look at that and be like, thank God I'm not that person. But let's talk about the good stuff, like what you just said.
Yeah.
So what if we changed our mindset? And, you know, that's what I'm all about is flipping. And my mindset's not perfect. I'll go ahead and put that disclaimer out there, but I'm a work in progress. And this is my phrase. I love it. I'm a work in progress. And actually, I always want to remain a work in progress because as long as I am, I'm always progressing. Okay. So I'll just throw that disclaimer out there. But what if we lived in a world to where we flip that mindset and we're like, I want my child to see me going to the gym.
Right.
I want my child to see me eating healthy because what are you teaching them? See what I'm getting at? So, and I'm not knocking anybody. I'm just saying, what if we thought that way? What if we thought, you know, it's okay to love your children. That's not what we're saying. But I think like in my era growing up, we were self-efficient more so than kids are nowadays. So introduced them into growing, right? And healthy habits. Because we're introducing them to a crap ton of unhealthy habits, right? So in that case, it's like, why is so-and-so watching me today? Because mommy or daddy's going to the gym. Yeah. Or they get to the age where my wife, she'll let the kids play at the park and just walk around the dang
right. Yeah.
whatever they're playing on instead of the whole track, because obviously you don't want to leave your kids half a mile behind. But walk around the track or just around the playground. Yeah. What's wrong with that? I mean, nothing. You know, get up. We had a date night not long ago, which is few and far between when you become parents and young kids. We had a date night and we were like, what are we going to do? You know, because I mean, sometimes we go out of town for the weekend. That's not what I'm saying. But locally, if we stay locally, we'll usually talk ourselves out of doing stuff, right? Because like date night to us is actually getting some sleep.
Right.
But we actually went over here to Broad Street and we got a coffee at Swift and Fitch.
Yep.
And we walked down Broad Street, across the Lock Bridge, Ridge Ferry Park, back. I think we clocked 6 miles.
Dang, okay.
Just conversation. So the same thing you said in that 40 minutes. I mean, it was a date night, but you know what? There was no stress. We were happy. We drank a cup of coffee. We walked. We actually got home at like 9:30, and we were like, really don't want to go in, do you? No. So then we went to because we live out in Armurchie, so we went over to the high school, and we walked for another 2 or 3 miles.
Dang. That's
you know?
Cool.
And so you just got to get it in when you can get it in. Yeah. You know what I mean? And we'll do that sometimes. We'll take the kids with us. I mean, we'll talk about this later, but I have an idea of what I want to create that will help a lot of that in our community, right? Don't even want to throw that out there, but eventually we will. Because that's a real problem. But really it starts with the mindset. Instead of saying, I can't do something, or I'm not there yet, that's one thing you can do. I can't do something, why? Tell me why you can't do something. Mm-hmm. And start saying, okay, once you identify why you can't, you can start fixing those. Start fixing the non-priority stuff, meaning that this isn't stuff that really personally affects you or your family. This is stuff that really doesn't matter. It's outside noise, or it's like Facebook or whatever it is that stops your day, just like you said. And prioritize what you can, and then say, okay, how can I balance that now? It's not about really controlling anything. It's about managing stuff. Does that make sense? So to me, if you flip that mindset on what I can't do and turn it into I can if I do this, you'll find yourself start going through, training towards a direction of growth. Yeah. And you'll find a way.
Yeah.
You'll find a way. Yeah.
Why are you so passionate about, helping others get through mental blocks? I didn't know if this is something you've always had passion for, and you've recently started doing some life coaching. I didn't know if you had somebody have major influence in your life and you want to give back now, or what kind of sparked all that, well, you see the potential in people that they don't see, and you want to help them get through it, or what's kind of the flame behind all that? My
self-growth. I want to give back to what I experienced, what I went through, and what helped me change. The biggest, I feel like I've grown up twice in my life as an adult. I grew up at 35, kind of realized things. I grew up last year. And through that, I put myself first in a lot of things. Because I was the one that, there's nothing wrong with giving you shirt off your back and being there for people, but you got to realize how often more are you there for people? And we'll say, hey, I'm there for them more than they are for me. That's not what I'm talking about. You know what? You won't really have that conversation. How many times are you there for yourself? Never. Yeah. So how are you going to sit there and tell you somebody else in? You know what I mean? So I kind of hit that point to where it's like, you know what? I'm to blame. That blame shifting, right? People, it's easy to blame a death, blame this, blame that, blame a person. Blame yourself. Look at yourself first. Fix yourself. Everything else you generally will go into, fix itself. Right. So to me, it was self-growth. It was a moment of self-growth where I realized that, hey, I got to put myself first, my needs first, but how can I be good for anybody if I'm not good for myself? And it's so crazy, man. I went through a bad breakup, and I was like, now is the time to really just focus on myself. So I focused on myself mentally, emotionally, physically, and financially, which is the 4 things I hit in my podcast and in life coaching. Okay. And through that was therapy. Everybody should have therapy. It's nothing to be ashamed about. You know, it's a non-biased opinion telling you, coming from someone who's a licensed professional that deals with 1,000 personalities a day, a week, or however many sessions they get, right? So he can look at you and automatically know more than you know about yourself by hearing what you do. So therapy helped. And my biggest thing was setting boundaries in my life. And I came to a realization like, yeah, we had some shitty people in our lives before, but we put them there.
Yep. That's true.
And that's a hard pill to swallow sometimes. We put them there. We allowed them there. Being vulnerable isn't a bad thing. You should be vulnerable. Be vulnerable to yourself. So everybody knows, like, it's the same chemical you get when you do drugs, when you're first in a relationship, man. The dopamine's pumping and you're like, oh man, you ignore all these red flags. Set boundaries. And not just in relationships, that's job, man. Workforce, toxic environments is worse than a toxic relationship sometimes.
Yeah, you're there. You're at work longer than you are with your family.
Yeah. So you gotta sit down. You gotta say, okay, what am I willing to accept? What am I willing not to accept? All right. So that's what I did, and then I started going to the gym. So that was the physical form. Started eating healthier again. You know, so there's the emotional, physical, financially. I started saving some money. I started being like, why am I wasting money on this and that? Invest in yourself. Why do we invest in other companies? And investment isn't always monetary. That's your time.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, that's worth more than money. So I'm not saying working for somebody isn't a bad thing, but we're trained to an employee's mentality, not an employer's mentality. And that's another conversation for another episode. But I realized all that. I got into a healthy relationship, which allowed me to grow even further, because every red flag that I was trained was a red flag wasn't necessarily a red flag as to what the instance was. It was more than it was the person that was doing that. So what I mean by that is, if you've been in a relationship with someone and they're on Facebook at 2:00 in the morning, it doesn't always mean they're cheating. It means they could just really couldn't be sleeping. They're scrolling or posting their business,
Right.
So it was a self-growth. And then outside of that, man, so it was me, myself, a healthy relationship, therapy, fitness, and podcasts like this. So every day when I would go to the gym, I would turn on a certain individual and I would listen to him and listen to him and listen to him. And the knowledge from a podcast was so powerful. And then he became a life coach and stuff. And I'm like, man, that's what I want to do. Like, it helped me. It helped me get out of my own way, because we're our own worst enemy. And it allowed me to see through that darkness and be like, you know what, that's what I want to provide to other people.
Do you think that would be somebody's, like, I guess, closest lifeline? Like, say, let's just say you're in a situation where you grew up like really rough and your environment was toxic, and that's like how you were born. Like, that's the influence you had around you as a child. So you know as well as I know what you are around as a kid and a baby. It kind of wires your brain a certain way.
That's right.
How you were brought up. So it's not really their fault. To when they get an adult, they have these like self-limiting beliefs because of how they were raised. So it's really not their fault. But how do you then start rewiring that person? What's one thing a person can do that's like at the age of like 20 years old? They've had a rough bringing up. Mm-hmm. They feel like in their heart there's a better way, a better life, but they got their family that's going against them. They got their friends because of how they were raised. They got, I feel like what you just said, a real simple lifeline would be to start surrounding yourself with either people that are in situations where you desire to be, or listening to information like podcasts. I mean, that's some simple stuff. You could start soaking it up, like hearing it from other people that there's a better life. There's more opportunities. Like, so I grew up in a pretty normal household. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't bad. So, but I do see a lot of people, I almost like I want it more for them than they want it from themselves. And it's not really their fault. It's just how they were raised. And I'm like, how would you truly get in there and rewire their brain to see that, man, life can be better. Look at how you were raised, look at who you're dating, look at your family. It's like you got everything going against you, but what's that tipping point? Of course, I guess the person's got to want it.
Number one.
But then, like, what's some realistic strategies they could do to to start learning and like, you know, maybe pivoting a little bit to create a better life. And I feel like podcast and, you know, maybe they don't know anybody personally to hang out with that would be a good influence on them. So that's why I think it's so cool now we do got podcasts and stuff like that where you can actually hear other people's stories. So I feel for people that's in that situation. I just wanted your opinion on what's some like realistic things that person could do that's in that situation where they are kind of in a bad gear because of how they were raised. You know, what's that one thing they could do to start truly changing, just to have a better life, whatever that be. You know, it could be financially, it could be just whatever.
Well, the first thing you got to look at is your environment. Your environment sets your potential. I say that on every one of my episodes. Your environment could be, like you said, your childhood environment, right? And that's where a lot of fixed mindsets come from, because you grew up in a mill town, farm town, or whatever, and you don't think that you can outdo what your environment that you've been in. All right. Same thing with relationships and friends. You got to come to a realization that what's cool really isn't that cool. All right. So the first thing you got to do, I use this frame, die to yourself. What that means to me is everything you know, everything you've been through, get rid of it. It's done. It's in the past.
Yeah.
You can't carry it forward. Okay. It's like going hiking and putting a 50 pound rock in your backpack, and you're carrying that thing over a mountain. But here's the thing. Mountains were made to climb, not to carry with you. So why are we doing it?
Right.
So the first thing is coming to realization of a few things. What makes me happy? What brings me joy? What brings me peace? This list is over here. What does the opposite of that? It could be your own mother. It could be your brother. You're going to have to love them from a distance. Okay? You got to die to yourself and everything you know. Take the good and leave the bad behind. You have to make commitments to yourself. This is where I want to be 6 months from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and work backwards. Because if your 10-year goal is this, and you don't work backwards from that, then you're not going to achieve that. Okay? And and then say, hey, you know, I'm a type of person, some of the excuses they would be, I don't have the resources. Sure you do. Like you said, the resources are online. Where do I start? Here's where you start. So I think that a lot of people get stuck in that because they don't have that. I don't want to say knowledge. They don't know that they have podcasts they can reach out to. They don't have a therapist. They don't have insurance. They can't afford it. So what I would tell them, you know, obviously if they're coming to me, is a lot of this stuff can be fixed on your own, because I feel like a majority of it was on mine. But you got to identify yourself. You got to identify the good and the bad, and you got to leave it behind. And obstacles aren't in the path. Sometimes obstacles are the path.
What about people that are in situations where you're in a bad environment? You don't know if maybe your partner don't know that, but you're ready for change. But let's just throw this one in the loop. You feel trapped because of like financial reasons. Like I'm whether it's a marriage or a relationship, boyfriend, you've done got a house together, bills.
I've been there.
I can't afford to live on my own. I mean, what am I supposed to do? And if I break up with him, he might kick me out. Or if I go get my own place, I can't even sign. I can't pass a credit check. That's where people truly feel stuck, and I feel for them.
No, I do too.
And I'm like, man.
At the same time, we got to put blame where blame is deserved. You chose to get in that relationship. You chose to get in that situationship. And I get it. At the beginning, people were one way. People changed. Trust me, I've been in both sides of that. I know exactly what you're saying. But it all goes back to having a growth mindset. Do not ever, and this is what I try to, you know, my daughter's 23, and I said, babe, look, I want you to always be self-sufficient, because I don't want you ever having to make a bad decision based on a relationship. And that's a big lesson to learn. So create dependency. And honestly, that goes back to parenting. We have to create dependency for our children so they know that when they're 18, they don't have to become dependent. Now then you have a different situation where someone could have been dependent. They become codependent because someone said, oh, babe, I got you. You're pregnant. Trust me. Blah, blah.
Right.
Again, once I was young and stupid, okay? I've probably been that guy. Be honest. That's one thing I tell everybody on my episodes. I'll never talk about something that I haven't personally experienced. But for the person that is part of codependency and they don't know the way out, You just got to find the way out.
And I'll speak on Allie's behalf. My girlfriend, she tells a little bit about this in one of her previous episodes, but she was in a similar situation. She was in a toxic marriage, stay-at-home mom, 2 kids. She didn't work, didn't have her own source of income. She truly was miserable and felt trapped. Because what are you going to do with 2 kids with no income? So she knew she had to find a way. So long story short, she mustered up and was able to save up a little bit of pennies here and there, doing some like boot camp type stuff, make a little extra money here and there to pay $99 to join a direct sales company. $99 is all it took to change her life and open up a whole nother road of freedom and a escape plan, call it what you want to call it. So that's, and like I said, she can elaborate more on that, but that was her way, ultimately that direct sales company created eventually enough income to where she could go out and rent a place of her own and get out of that marriage. So
it was an opportunity. Like, it's good to get to the point where you're hopeless, but you can't dwell in hopelessness, because if you get in hopelessness and then you feel like there's not a way out. But the good part of getting into hopelessness is the fact that it can drive you, right? So what I would tell somebody that was in that situation, most of the time that situation you just discussed is young adults. Majority of the time, if we were to talk statistically wise. The first thing you want to do is set boundaries in a relationship from day one. This is what I expect. This is what I won't deal with, no matter if we have children, no matter what. But I love you. Well, not day one, but like when you get to that point, right. I love you. You love me. So I want to struggle together and I want to shine together. But it takes 2. So you got to decide, is that person that you're going in that relationship with, or in that business relationship with, or any of that kind of stuff, right? Are they going to be able to reciprocate what you're able to put in, and can you reciprocate what they can put in? Number 1, communication, what we talked about earlier. So don't wait until it's the 11th hour and you can't do anything. Like when something bothers you, by God, say it. Say, look, change your tone. I don't deserve that. Don't let them get in that trend of whether it becomes that, or, hey, you scared me a little bit physically. That's how you get angry about this, and you threw a phone against the wall, whatever that's, because that happened. I don't really like that. What made you that way? Right. Don't come from a point of, I made you, and if they say you did, get out. Yeah. Right? Lesson 1, gone. But they got to work on themselves. So I think a true, strong couple will call each other out on their bullcrap and hold each other accountable, set up guardrails and boundaries. And I don't think there's anything wrong with a daily, if not weekly, accountability thing. Hey, you getting a little outside the guardrail there. You good?
Yep.
So if they instill that at the very beginning, it can't get out of hand. And that's the same thing with life or anything. It's like, you as a person, before you get into anything, you should know what you're willing to deal with and not deal with. Love can blind that. That dopamine, all that stuff can blind that. But it's very crucial that, and my wife and I was like, hey, this is what we're okay with. This is what we're not okay with. Yeah. And, I'll learn that through therapy to set those boundaries.
Yeah, that's cool.
My therapist was like, hey, your problem isn't you, but it's you. And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, in relationships, you are what we consider a high-valued individual, meaning, you're not better than anybody. You're just above average as far as like the way you think, your success, the things you've done in life, etc., whatever that might be, right? Yeah. He's like, but I don't think you've ever been with anyone that's the same way. So what happens is, after the whole, I like being with you phase is over, they don't satisfy, or they'll never meet your expectations because you're up here. And I'm not saying anybody's better than you. I'm just saying realistically, you're up here, like you want to start a business, you want to own a farm, whatever that might be. And they're okay with the 9 to 5, not going to work, right? Yeah. So, and then at the same point, things will change, and then they'll be like, man, I'm never going to be able to reach his expectations. So then they don't feel good enough. And it's not that they don't feel good enough, they're just not good enough in that situation. Yeah. And but honesty and communication eliminates all that.
And that's why it's ultimately just best to just constantly be trying to be the best version of yourself you can be, because whether you're single or in a relationship, because so many people, I'll see where they'll get in a relationship, and then one of them will, a year in, start trying to become the best person. Like you just said, they'll elevate past that person, And all of a sudden that person that's like now working on themselves has got all these other opportunities. Their ideas are flowing. That person down here is still kind of the same. They don't feel as good as it causes a lot of problems in relationships. So I'm like, if they had just strived to be the best person they could be before they met each other, they'd be like equal or closer to it.
Well, relationships got to be teamwork. Just like I feel like you guys are a great example of a power couple. My wife and I are too. Not everybody's built that way, but you can be your own version of that, right? The opposite works too, where you're just saying someone gets way up here because they're like thriving and the other person never does. So then you got a guy or a woman or whoever in a relationship and in a situation where like, man, I'm doing all this, but I'm not really getting much help over here. You know, I've been in that before in the past.
Right.
And then you have to think, okay, what do I do? Am I the bad guy that cuts this off? I need a partner that can rise up with me. And that's why I thank God for the relationship I'm in now, man, because we push each other. It doesn't matter if it's working out. It doesn't matter if it's eating healthy, thriving business-wise, parenting. We push each other, and we're on the same page.
Well, cool, man. Where can people follow you and keep up with your journey? I know we touched on it earlier. Instagram.
Instagram, Twitter, TikTok.
It's John Facebook. Roberson, Mindset Reload.
It's at the Mindset Reload. At the Mindset Reload. And you can email the show at podcast@themindsetreload.com. And I am going to start I'm in the process of getting my life coach certificate. You don't have to have it, which is kind of weird that you don't, because I mean, you're very influential. But I think people who are questionable about, hey, you know, I need this, go listen to the podcast. If something you get from it, hit me up. I mean, it's not trying to be some crazy money maker, but obviously time equals money, or I wouldn't be practicing what I preach.
That's it, brother.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, you can only give out so much free water, you know?
That's it.
And I do want to help you guys, but I will also not take advantage of that because I once needed it and didn't have the resources. So I think we have some plans set up that actually benefit people. And that's the main goal, is to change one life if our podcasts do that. So yeah, hit us up for you know, anything. If there's a discussion you want to hear on a podcast, I'll write a show around it or bring you on as a guest. I have a meeting tomorrow with someone, you know, that
cool.
It's like, man, your podcast has changed me, man. I'd like to meet up with you and pick your brain on stuff. All right, man, cool. You know, because I needed that from somebody.
Yeah.
So I want to give back what was given to me. And you guys can look us up at the Mindset Reload on social media platforms. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iTunes, iHeartRadio, and Amazon, all of them.
Cool.
Yeah, man.
Awesome, man. Well, John, I appreciate you coming on today. I think that's going to wrap up this episode. And I think we got plenty of ideas where we could probably do an episode number 2 in the future.
Oh, man, I'm down. You just let me know.
All right, brother. Well, we'll catch you next time. Y'all have a good day.
Right, appreciate y'all.
See you.
Thank you for listening to another episode. If you received any value from the show, please share, subscribe, and give us a rating.